The great beasts are one of the most fascinating things in the spirit animal books. The conflicts that take place in Erdis usually always start with the great beast. Today we'll be talking about Kovo, also known as the great ape. Kovo is one of the biggest driving factors in the whole series, changing from villain to anti-hero throughout the whole of the two series. We will be going over Kovo's life and the impact he made on the whole series. Kovo was born a couple of years before the Wyram hit Earth. Kovo was a young gorilla who lived in a troop, raised by his mother. Kovo did not have a name. When the Wyram was about to hit Erdis, Kovo was sent out to find what it was. He was chosen because he was fast and he would not be distracted. When Kovo saw the Wyram hit Erdis, the impact killed his troop, but left Kovo and a group of random animals. Kovo was the first to travel down and face the Wyram egg, and these moments when he saw the Wyram are what shaped the rest of Kovo's life. Kovo was deeply disturbed by what he saw inside of the egg. From that day on, Kovo had the one goal, which was destroying the Wyram. Kovo and the other great beasts grew close and respected each other. Kovo especially grew close to Jerathon. Kovo called his home Nilo, as did Kaburu and Uriza. A folk story says that Kovo lost his tail for trying to trick the big cats to stop fighting, or else they would have destroyed Nilo. Though this may not be 100% accurate, it does make sense. Kovo would later go to the people underground near the Evertree and teach them the knowledge to guard the egg and make sure it does not open. Kovo and the others would later make talismans. Kovo created the obsidian ape, which granted the user the ability to analyze anything and find its weakness. Kovo would eventually begin constructing his plan of destroying the Wyram. Kovo and Jerathon would use the Great Beast talismans to create the Staff of Cycles, which would hopefully kill the Wyram. Kovo most likely asked the other Great Beasts to use their talismans, but they all probably refused. Kovo would take advantage of Sterile, an isolated kingdom that lacked any source of materials that could be traded. Kovo and Jerathon would use Bile, created by Jerathon's talisman, the Jade Serpent, as a gift to the young king Felindor. Kovo's army was called the Conquerors. The Conquerors would eventually steal Hollower, Brigand, G, Essex, and Uriza's talismans. During this war, the Green Cloaks would be created and take a stand against the Conquerors. Kovo's plans would eventually fail when Uriza, Brigand, G, and Essex aided the Green Cloaks in the final battle. Even though Kovo had created an incompleted Staff of Cycles, Kovo and Jerathon were both imprisoned and King Felindor was killed along with the 4 Great Beasts, ending the First Conqueror War. Kovo was imprisoned in Muttering Rock. The other Great Beasts did not know why Kovo started the war, but thought it was for his own malicious intent. Kovo still planned to collect all the talismans, because as Kovo said, he'd rather kill off the whole world rather than have them imprisoned by the Wyram. Kovo was imprisoned to the end of the First Devour War and was released at the very end of the Second. When Kovo was released, he was given the Staff of Cycles, but before he could use it, the rest of the Great Beasts arrived and sacrificed themselves and took Kovo, and all of them destroyed the Evertree along with themselves, except for the 4 fallen beasts. Kovo would eventually be summoned to a Nylonian monk named Takota. Kovo and Takota were then taken by Connor to Greenhaven when Zareth attacked with the Wyram. Kovo was put into chains as they waited for Roland, Abik, and Milan to arrive. Kovo and Takota had an interesting relationship and were able to communicate as Kovo would use sign language when he wished to speak to Takota. Kovo would eventually lead Maylin and Connor and their spirit animals down into the underground world. During this time, the group would not be able to pass as Kovo and Brigand were too big, and each would have to be placed into passive state. Kovo would choose to be on Takota's neck, where his tattoo would lie. This shows that Kovo thinks that he is the one in charge of their relationship, even though it should be mutual. Kovo and the group would eventually run to Xanith, who would lead them to Sandre. Eventually, the group would be saved when Kovo revealed himself. Kovo would lead the group closer to the Wyram egg. During this time, Kovo and Takota would bond closer. Kovo would eventually get to the Wyram as with the group. However, Connor would be fully infected and tied up. Kovo and Mulop would eventually create a contact, and the 4 heroes would explain where they were. Kovo and the group being near the Wyram egg, and Abik and Roland at the Place of Desolation with the Red Cloaks led by Shane. At this time, the Wyram would hatch from its egg. Kovo and the group would fight the Wyram, as well as Connor's forces. However, they would be rescued when Xanath and the remaining forces of Sandre came to rescue them. While fighting, Dakota would be dragged by the infected. Kovo, surprised to everyone's surprise, would go and save Dakota, as the two of them had really shown a bond. The Wyram would leave the battle, trying to bond with Xerath, and Kovo would follow, to no avail. The Wyram would eventually be defeated, and Kovo and Dakota headed to the monastery with Xanath. Kovo fell into silence after the Wyram was defeated, most likely because he had nothing to do, as the Wyram was his main goal for most of his life. Kovo would later help the four heroes when they came to Nilo looking for Stormspeaker. Kovo showed that he cared for Xanath when the Oathkeeper put her in danger, and Kovo would try breaking free of his chains. This is the last we see of Kovo in the book series. Kovo is one of the most dynamic characters in Spirit Animals. Kovo was shrouded in mystery until the second series, where we saw a less intimidating and more friendly side of the Great Ape. In the end, Kovo, not being a full hero, was more of an anti-hero who, despite everyone's beliefs, did everything for a selfless intent. This has been the Masked Spirit, and I hope you enjoyed the life of Kovo.